When I first started looking at a home office NAS, I kept seeing the same story. People go for the cheapest 2-bay box they can find, set it up, and then spend the next week wrestling with slow transfers, overheating hardware, or a UI that feels like it was designed for a different generation. The regret that follows a bargain bin purchase is real, especially when you're trying to protect work files or a growing media library. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Qnap HS264 tries to position itself as the smarter middle ground, not the cheapest chips option, but also not the enterprise-grade monster you'd need a rack for. The first thing I did with the HS264 was plug it into my router, hook two 4TB drives, and let the quick setup wizard run. The whole process took about 10 minutes, and the wizard walked me through RAID configuration, network settings, and user permissions without demanding I read a 30-page manual. For someone who isn't a network engineer, that level of guided setup matters because the alternative is spending an afternoon on forums trying to decipher why a drive isn't being recognized. Once the OS loaded, the QTS desktop appeared in my browser, looking clean and responsive. The Intel Celeron N5105 chip, despite being a low-power part, handled the web-based interface without lag. In daily use, the HS264 shines when I need a shared folder for my freelance design files. I have a MacBook Pro and a Windows laptop, and both can map the same SMB share in under a second. When I drag a 2GB Photoshop file from my laptop to the NAS, the transfer speed settles around 150 MB per second, which is comfortably fast for my workflow and far better than the sub-50 MB/s speeds I got from a cheap US-connected enclosure. The fanless design also means I've never heard a whirring noise, even when the drives are under load. That quiet operation is a practical strength if you keep the unit on a desk in a home office or a living room media center. The value proposition becomes clearer when you look at the hidden trade-offs. The HS264's desktop form factor means it doesn't need a rack, but it also limits expandability. You're locked at 2 drive bays. That's fine if your storage needs are modest, but if you anticipate needing 10 terabytes or more within the next year, you'll have to start planning a migration to a larger system. Another point that often catches new owners off guard is the reliance on the Celeron's integrated graphics for any media transcoding. Qnap advertises hardware-accelerated video streaming, and in practice the box can transcode a 1080p H.264 stream for a single client without stutter. But try to push a 4K HDR file to multiple devices simultaneously and you'll see the CPU bump up and the stream start to buffer. So, if you're building a dedicated Plex server that will serve several 4K streams at once, you might outgrow this box sooner than you think. Who should buy the HS264? Think of small team environments, home offices, and hobbyist creators who need reliable, always-on storage without the overhead of a full-blown server. It's also a solid choice for photographers or videographers who want a central backup that can be accessed from multiple workstations, and who appreciate the ability to run Qnap's suite of apps like snapshots, remote replication, and even a lightweight Docker container for running a personal cloud service. The fact that it's fanless reduces maintenance. There are no moving parts besides the drives, so you won't have to clean dust out of a fan every few months. On the flip side, you'll want to skip this model if your primary goal is high-performance media transcoding for a family media room, or if you need more than 2 drives now and don't want to deal with a future migration. The same goes for anyone who expects enterprise-grade redundancy. The HS264 offers RAID 1 mirroring, which protects against a single drive failure, but it doesn't have the hot swap bays, dual-port networking, or redundant power supplies you'd find in higher-end Qnap models. In those scenarios, the upfront savings start to feel like a compromise. A practical weakness that shows up after a few weeks is the Ethernet port configuration. The unit only comes with a single 2.5 GB port, which is plenty for most home internet speeds, but if you're on a multi-gigabit LAN and want to aggregate bandwidth, you'll need a separate USB 3.0 or PCIe network adapter, something that isn't included and can add a few $100s to the total cost. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's a hidden expense that can surprise buyers who assumed gigabit meant plug-and-play on any network. Another subtle issue is the app ecosystem. QTS has a rich library of applications, But not every app runs smoothly on the Celeron's limited RAM. I noticed that running the QTS surveillance station with multiple IP cameras caused occasional hiccups, and the UI would take a second longer to refresh. If you're planning to turn the NAS into a full-blown security hub, you might want to budget for a model with more RAM or a